Good morning, everybody. We are going to talk about this Stephen A. Smith and Anton Daniels interview. By the way, two grifters come together to grift. Who would have thunk it, right? So go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Also, hit that hype button so you can help me get up in the algorithm as well, too. Some of y'all say y'all don't see the hype button. It should be where the comments are. If you scroll, you should see the hype button. So I just want to let y'all know that. But let's go ahead and get into the show. Here we go, you guys. Let's go ahead and get started. Y'all ready? Mind you, this is probably going to be some rage bait shit. I just want to let y'all know. Here we go.
Want to do because I respect where you're coming from. Even when you get on me, I'm going like this. Well, damn, you got a good point. You got a good point.
I'm already pissed and it just started. Okay, let's get to it.
It's no big. It's all love, brother. I'm good with it. Let me ask you this question. How would you describe yourself, particularly in this day and age? Are you a conservative or are you just a YouTuber? Are you a podcast? What would you say? What do you want the world to know you believe you are?
I wouldn't define myself as a conservative first. I would define myself as a saint first.
A saint?
A saint, right? And it's a difference between a Christian and a saint. A saint is a person that believes every word in the word, right? We don't differentiate. We don't pick and choose which part of the Bible we believe. Even if I'm not perfect or I'm not doing everything right, I define myself by my belief in God. That's first, above all. And then everything else comes after that, right? So I am conservative, which I used to be Democrat.
So he calls himself a saint, but yet he be having other women and he's a married man. See how like he fits perfectly with the conservative party because they always be talking about Christian values, but yet they be out here dipping and doing it and two-timing and doing everything else under the sun. But hey, as long as they're heterosexual, that's all that matters, right? And heterosexual and not a Democrat. That's all that matters.
I'm not going to say liberal, but I am a Republican. I'm a conservative Republican. I've been married since I was 22 years old. So I've been married for the better part of 22 years. I'm a father. And then more importantly, I'm a bag chaser. So I'm always going to do the thing that adds value into people's lives, and I expect to be fairly compensated as a result of it.
You know, when you decided to support Trump in 2024, what was it about the MAGA movement that made you support it? Was it the fact that you are, as you described, or was there something different transpiring in 2024 that you saw compelled you to gravitate towards that?
Well, the first thing is I felt like the election was stolen from him in 2020. There's no way that anybody can convince me that Joe Biden is the most popular president of all time and he got over 81 million votes. I'm not going for it. The second thing is that I start to take a deeper look at my own life, right? Because especially as Black people in the community, we taught to automatically vote Democrat regardless because we Black, right?
Yeah.
But when I started to deep dive into the things that Democrats stood for, it wasn't the fact that Republicans or Trump or MAGA first got my attention. The first thing that got my attention is the things that I didn't align with the party that I had been voting for based off of what my family told me to do, right? I don't believe in men and women's bathrooms. I don't believe in, a lot of the stuff, my dollars going to the federal government and letting them manage my money more than I can. I believe in smaller government. I believe in spirituality. I believe in a lot of the things. And so when I started to figure out, what are we doing? Why am I voting this way? I started to explore, what about Trump didn't I like? And I realized that it was more propaganda that was fed to me and that, he was supposedly be racist and all of this.
As he speaks propaganda. So let's just kind of backtrack for a minute. So Joe Biden getting 81 million views. As you guys know, they're opening up an investigation to look at if the 2020, not the 2024, the 2020 election was stolen. That election was not stolen. Do you know that we were in a crisis? Usually when we are in a crisis, that's when you will see people vote a certain way. and not necessarily we might have been a fan of Joe Biden, we knew at the end of the day, we needed someone to get us out of dire restraint that we were in at the time. Did we forget about COVID? And you know what? I take back that question because you guys have forgot about it. You know, a lot of people forgot about the time that we were living in during 2020 because they voted Trump in again. So obviously you did forget. The other point about, oh yeah, my family just told me to vote Democrat and stuff like that. Now, from my household, they never said, oh yeah, you need to vote Democrat because you're Black. That has never been a conversation. But historically, we know that Black people do vote Democrat, right? And we can go down the list and the history of that. But obviously, when we look at the two-party system, both parties don't give a damn about us, right? But one party is in particular is very regressive, where they want to take away rights and take things away from you, compared to the other party that might not do extra for us, but they aren't there to try to harm us. So obviously, we look at the situation and evaluate it. I want to kill this whole narrative that Black voters are just dumb and we just follow, we're a monolith. No, we understand the game and we understand the system better than anybody, because yet the system has been mostly unfair to us. So we understand, motherfucker. All right, let's continue.
Stuff. And then I started to evaluate every other president that came before him. And I realized that he's just a quote unquote straight shooter, right? I mean, he just tells it like it is, regardless of whether you agree with him or not. And most of the things that he said, I aligned with.
You know, one of the things I want to push back on you on this notion about the 2020 election from this perspective. I believe that the election was legit, but not for the reasons one would think. I totally agree with you. I don't believe anywhere in hell 81 million people wanted Joe Biden to be president. But I do believe 81 million people wanted anybody but Donald Trump. So because of that, it makes because of that, it made it believable in terms of chaos, how much noise was being made. You know how people were like, you got people celebrating in the streets like, oh my God, we're finally free. You saw how exaggerative and how extra folks were when Trump was put out of office. So I'm saying that to me was emblematic.
And no fraud has been proven. All this, there's voter fraud, a whole bunch of illegals voted. That's all a lie.
Of a large portion of America saying we wanted a break from all of that noise. That's why I believe the election was legitimate.
Okay, Stephen A. So let me push back at you a little bit.
Sure.
Why are Democrats so against voter ID?
Well, hold on. We ain't got to argue. Me and you align with that. It don't make no. I'm not supporting. Listen, you got to have an ID for everything. Right. I'm with you with that. I mean, I do think it was ridiculous, but I also pay attention to Senator Fetterman, who's been supported for the most part of the Republicans.
Fetterman.
When Fetterman said, quote, he says certain things about the SAFE Act are a bit extra. Yeah, you essentially got to have a passport, and it is more difficult to get ID, under these restrictions that they're putting out there than it was before. So I do believe that, but that doesn't mean that both sides can't come together and resolve that in a damn day.
So again, the SAVE Act is not just a voter ID act. It's not about just having ID. They specifically want you to prove your citizenship by having a birth certificate or a passport, some way to show that you're a quote unquote citizen. But the issue is that it's hard enough trying to get that document because some people don't have it. I talked about earlier in being in a Black household, your mama don't want to give you your birth certificate. I had to go down to the office or whatever to get my actual birth certificate so I can get a real ID. It was hard enough to get a real ID. So now you want us to go ahead and get like this whole voter registration card to try to now verify that we're voting. And here's the thing about voter ID. And this proves that it's not about just having a ID, because at the end of the day, over 30 states already have some kind of voter ID law where you have to show your ID to be able to vote. So with those states already having an ID, like, why do we need a SAVE Act, you know? And I'll just take California because that's where I live. I'll take California, for example. When you register to vote, you put in your address, your address, your ID number or your driver license number, your social security number. You're putting in all your information already. So when you register to vote, they already have you in the system. The only time they need to check and verify you if you have a provisional ballot or your first time voting. If you've been voting all your life, well, all of a sudden now you need an ID. You're already in the system. And any questions that they have about a ballot, they don't count those. Even when you turn in your ballot, you sign off on it and everything like that. Like there are ways to verify you, Hey, and at the end of the day, if you can get a fake ID to get in the club, can't you get a fake ID to vote? Just a thought.
For the Democrats to act like no ID should be required or whatever, like California and some of the stuff I learned about them and what they're doing under Gavin Newsom.
Oh, and I forgot the whole marriage thing. Like if you're a married woman and your name doesn't match your name on the birth certificate, that's the other thing. They're trying to make it hard for you. Also, we have to think about the trans community. Their names are not going to match. So boom, you have another issue with a demographic. So they're really trying to suppress people from voting. That's the problem.
That is utterly ridiculous. So you and I we ain't far off on that.
But that tells me, though, that they're fighting for it for a reason. And I don't believe it's because they really believe that people are being disenfranchised at the polls. I believe that they're fighting for it because they truly believe that it's going to affect whether or not they get elected and future elections. And I believe that the Democrats, their whole strategy, because as people get older and wiser, this is not even my opinion, this is a fact. Most people evolve to become more conservative, and then they sometimes, more often than not, deflect over and to become a Republican, right? When you're younger, that's really a Democrat's game is being, liberal, right? Because you don't know any better. But as people get older and wiser, they never defect from.
I don't know. That's an opinion. And it's funny because Anton Daniels is in the manosphere and they always say opinion over facts, right? That's an opinion that you're given. Like, that's not a fact. Like, oh, as you become older, you become more conservative. I think the older you get, the more you don't give a fuck. But that's even an opinion, right? Even though I think that's partially true that old people, they don't give a Shout out to all my old heads in the chat.
From the Republican Party over to the Democrat Party is usually the other way around, right? So what they have to do is they have to find new voters and new people that support them. And I believe that the civil rights movement was hijacked by feminism. Feminism ultimately was hijacked by the LGBTQ movement, which Obama ushered in, and he solidified that. I believe that diversity, equity, and inclusion was ultimately the thing that they really leaned on in order to make sure that they had people in the voter rolls that not only identified as Black, not only identified as Latino, not only identified based off of their sexuality, but they needed a whole new voter class. And
it's funny because when people say, oh, civil rights was hijacked and all this stuff, in a way, there is a conversation about how civil rights, we fought for that. And I'm talking about Black people, the Blacks, right? The Blacks. But we fought for that. And it does seem that we have been the lesser of the beneficiaries, as affirmative action, DEI, that has all benefited white women mostly. If you look at the demographics, white women benefit, and Black people are always like down the list in both of those things, right? So with that being said, that is an argument, but I want to clear up some because I hear a lot of times, and especially in like the manosphere and stuff like that, you'll hear like they say, oh yeah, Barack Obama didn't do anything for Black people. He just did stuff for gay people. Now, what they're talking about is that he had, he made it a law that gay people can get married, So they always use that as a way to say, oh, all he did was care about gay people. He only fought for them. No, he gave them the right to marry. And if you look at the statistics, most people agree with gay marriage. Now, at the time, in early 2008, I think it was, because it was Proposition 8. I remember that, where they banned gay marriage, or they outlawed it here in California. After that, a few years later, then that's when Barack Obama made it legal. So I think it goes with the time period and what people believe. And I think definitely now most people approve of gay marriage. So it's weird how people make that assumption like, oh, all he cared about was gay people. It's all like, okay, well, did he just have a whole bunch of rainbow flags around his office? Like, I don't know.
I think that immigrants was definitely the play. And that's why they're fighting so hard against voter ID.
But I don't disagree with most of that. What I'm saying is we can point to things that the Republicans do, the conservatives do, to position themselves for the same thing. For example, when you're redistricting in Texas, for example, and other places, you're doing that because you want to position yourself to get most votes.
Absolutely.
This is politics. This is politics.
Absolutely.
So in other words, we can't hate on one side for coming up with a mechanism, you understand, to curry more votes in your favor.
We have to, Stephen A. And the reason that we have to is
Why?
because it's one thing to, you said it yourself. I can't even jump on an airplane unless they identify who I am. I can't get a place to stay. I can't get a car. I can't get anything. But I can determine who it is that makes the laws that ultimately govern us. Like if that isn't the thing that we need to protect more than anything else in our culture, in our society, I don't know what is. So we have to be vigilant.
One thing that I do want to point out, whenever it comes to voter fraud, it's usually comes to find out that it's a Republican who committed the voter fraud. But the numbers are so small and minute that it does not, like all the quote unquote voter fraud would not change the results of an election. It's totally bullshit. It's an argument they love to make that goes nowhere. It's an endless argument that literally leads nowhere. Like it doesn't change the outcome of elections. Most of the time, the fraud gets caught. So what are we talking about?
To make sure that every vote is valid and every vote is counted. And we can't just let, mail-in ballots or people being able to, I say gaslight us and to believe in that. This election is free and fair when it's not. And I don't believe that that's what happened in 2020.
Well, let me tell you this, too. Let me tell you, because you left out something that's very, very important, Anton. When you in New York City and you need an ID to shovel snow, but you fight. I mean, you talk about telling on yourself. You talk about telling on yourself. I mean, Mamdani and the Democrats, it just went out the window. You fighting for the safe act not to exist, but in the same breath, you require an ID to shovel damn snow. That argument went out the window for them. There's no question.
I don't understand.
Yes, you all need ID to work a job. You need an ID and a social security number. Yes. Don't we all fill out, the I-9s or what are they called? The W-9s that you have for taxes and stuff like that? Like, yeah, of course you need an ID. Like that whole, Mandani making it, you need an ID for snow, but you don't need an ID from voting. As I said, when you register to vote, you're already verifying yourself with your information. They can look it up. Just like when the cop pulls you over, now they ask for your license and registration and stuff like that, but they already got your license plate. They see everything that they need to see, right? Before they even pull you over.
Understand. I know you were born and raised in Queens. I know your roots is definitely New York. I know you're a Knicks fan, and it breaks my heart to see what the Pistons are going to do to the Knicks. However,
I thought I liked you, bro. I thought I liked you. You got to bring up the Pistons. You got to do that to me, bro. You got to do that. All right, go ahead, man.
However, I have to say that you must be disappointed in what is happening in New York. And I'm not even talking about with Kathy Hochul. I'm not just talking about with Zoran Mamdani. I'm talking about city council. I'm talking about Eric Adams. Everything that has transpired over the last 5 years in New York has ultimately led to you guys electing somebody that hasn't even been born inside of the United States of America, and y'all married to them. So it bothers me. It bothers me that this country, is going the way that it's going.
You use the word disappointed. Nah, bro, I'm scared. I think New York is going to be an unmitigated disaster. I'm scared as hell. I already moved out the state, bro. I already bought a house in Florida. I ain't gonna lie to you. I already bought a house in Florida. I'm like, hell with this. This is an absolute mess. So you have your points. I'm just saying that you're making points about the Democratic Party. What would you say about the Republican Party? You're not about to sit up here and act like they're paragons of virtue, right? And that they're always honest and straightforward. We're not going to do that, are we?
No, I think that Bush II was the worst president
That's literally what he's doing. He's making it seem like Republicans are the saviors of the world. Like he is doing that, Stephen A. Smith.
In my life, I absolutely hated him because of the things that he did to the economy. That was the worst time of my life. I went broke. I think that Obama inherited a mess. I don't think that everything that Obama did was wrong. I actually think that Trump's policies more or less align with what Obama was doing in 2008, 2009, 2010, right? If you look at Nancy Pelosi's policies back in 96, right? If you look at what Joe Biden said that he stood for, if you look at what Obama represented, those are the same things that Trump represent. They want to make it seem like, well, him deporting illegal migrants is such a bad thing. Obama deported over 3 million people. In his terms, Trump didn't even deport 1 million people in his first term in office. So I don't think that what Trump is doing is so radical. I think that what he's doing is more closely aligned with what moderate Democrats was doing back in the 90s.
So no, it's not the same thing. And the reason why it's not the same thing is because they're not going through the courts. They're not taking the proper channels. They literally, because of the Reagan-Riley law, they can literally racial profile you and they can just come and snatch you up. They're wearing masks. They're not identifying themselves. Sometimes they don't even show you the warrant or whatever order that they even have. They're just coming and snatching you up. So it's a lot different. There's even a video that's been circulating around on X where they followed ICE agents as they came to go get people, right? This was during Barack Obama years. And the way that it was done was way different than what's being done now. It wasn't militarized. Like literally they had an order. They'd be like, hey, it's 5 a.m. We know this person go to work. We're going to come get them. You see them. They say, hey, are you this person? They get them, put them in the car, and then they do whatever. But what you see out in the streets is literally this, as they call Gestapo, and like this, like moving like a terrorist organization. They beating people, stomping them out, killing them. Like it's crazy. Like that shit ain't normal. They're being weaponized, and that's not right. And on top of that, they only have to go through 45 days of training, and they can be an ICE officer. To be a police officer, like law enforcement, you have to go through months, right? But you only need 45 days to be an ICE agent, and they have basically the same authority, man.
So with that being said, is it fair to say that you wouldn't be against the Democratic Party if it represented what those Democrats represented back in the day, that your real problem is with the progressive movement that appears to have taken over the Democratic Party, and that's what you completely disassociating yourself from?
No, absolutely not. I believe in less government. I believe that people that are here, they should be here legally. I don't believe in men and women's bathrooms. I believe in smaller, much, much smaller government. I don't believe in higher taxes. I don't believe that you are independent. I think that you are conservative. I think you're a Republican. And not just with your dollar. I think that you are a Republican, but I don't think that you are willing to admit it openly.
I have to agree. Let him cook.
Because of the backlash that comes along with the Black community and not supporting people that aligns with the Democratic Party. Okay.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up, because allow me to retort to that. I don't give a shit what people say. If I feel what I feel, I'm going to stand on it. My challenge is knowing what I'm talking about. You study politics more than I do, along with various others. And so because of that, there are times that I'm simply uncertain about a position. And because I'm uncertain about a position, I lean on the same old, same old. Like, for example, I'm about the economy. I want a strong economy, okay? So I'm about free market capitalism. But I like some safety nets, not just free market capitalism and let's minimize government involvement to the nth degree. I think that
like what? What safety nets?
No, I'm just talking about, when you talk about economically speaking, I don't want over-regulation, but I don't want zero regulation either. You see what I'm saying? And in a binary system, they force us to pick a side. So for me, when I say I'm an independent, I'm like, damn, there's certain things that I lean a little bit here to the right, and then I lean a little bit here to the left.
I don't think that the Republican Party forces us to pick. I don't. The Republican Party.
No, I'm just answering your question.
All parties want you to pick. Like, that's the whole point of, them running, because they want you to pick one side. Like, nobody goes like, oh, we don't want you to pick a side. Then why even run? Like, I don't know what he means by that.
About me. I'm just answering your question about me, just for clarification purposes.
That's fair.
With immigration, the only reason I totally supported Trump closing the borders because Biden opened them. If Biden had never opened
why not
them,
vote for him? Why not vote for him?
No such thing as open borders. You just can't walk through the border and be like, I'm here. Democrats need to work on better messaging around that to explain, like, the border has never been open.
Because first of all, I've said this on many occasions. I would have voted for Nikki Haley. I would have voted definitely for Nikki Haley, possibly DeSantis. I didn't like his remarks about good points about slavery, so I probably turned against him because of that. I didn't appreciate that shit at all. But I would tell you, for the most part, him, and I would vote for Marco Rubio. I wouldn't hesitate. But also know this about me, because I'm glad you asked, because I heard you touching on some of my politics with some of your cliques, and I was like, I can't wait to speak to this brother, right? And I said to myself, I said, listen, I don't blame him for feeling that way because he don't know me, and I've never really discussed a lot of this. But I said, listen, if you're sitting back and it's like, all right, it's immigration, follow the Obama policy, go ahead and keep that policy in place, I would have supported that. When you talk about safety in the streets, damn right. You ain't getting out of jail the same day you get in jail. Not on my watch. Mm-hmm. Oh, hell no. So in that regard, yeah, I'm more conservative than liberal. But entitlement programs are more liberal than conservative. I think the desolate and disenfranchised, because I think the desolate and disenfranchised need a helping hand from time to time. I know it helped me and my family. Now, we didn't lean on it. We didn't depend on it. We didn't live off of it for decades. But to get a helping hand, to uplift yourself, sometimes I think that's needed, and it doesn't bother me. So I'm pro-choice, because I don't believe in telling a woman what to do with her body. I think I'm more of a supporter of.
I want to say something real quick, because there's this notion that Black people need to struggle. We need to struggle in order to be successful. And I want to say this: the white people don't struggle like we do. They have no problems with getting handouts. If you look at statistics, they are the higher beneficiaries of all the government programs and stuff like that. They'll try to say, oh, well, we have more of the population. This is why. Well, if y'all so great, you shouldn't need no government assistance, right? But they'll make the face of welfare Black people. The thing is, Black people, we do it to each other. Like, whenever we get a leg up or we get money, we be like, this is my money. This is my house. This is my car. We don't say this is ours. We say this is mine. And rightfully so, because you worked hard and you earned that. But where did you hear that from? You've been hearing that for years, that you need to get out the mud and you need to do this and that. And this is what Republicans will sell you. They'll be like, yeah, the Democrat, they got you on that plantation. You on that Democrat plantation. And it's all like, okay, well, I want to get off the plantation. How can you help me? They'll be like, help? No. You need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps and go out there and get you a job. And that's how you pick. So you're not helping me. What if I don't have any boots? How am I supposed to pick myself up by the bootstraps? And why? And when did boots get straps, by the way? But let's continue.
The LGBTQ plus community than conservatives are. So those are the reasons why I would call myself an independent who leans a little bit left instead of right, to clarify.
But here's the thing, though, Stephen A. The Republican Party is not distancing itself from people that's choosing to live their life the way that they want to live it. That's not the position, and that's how it's marketed from the Democrat Party. Okay. There's plenty of gay people. There's plenty of people that live alternative lifestyles that are a part of the Republican Party. What the Republicans are basically saying and standing for is we should not be allowing for children to transition themselves, or for parents to transition children before they become of age. We should not
totally agree with that.
But see that
1,000% I agree with you.
It's not that Republicans are radical. They're not radical in their stance against anything. They believe in, freedom of religion, for you to be able to practice however you want to practice.
Right.
They're not trying to abolish gay marriage. None of that stuff is existing, right? That is a marketing ploy. But Democrats are extreme in their push for it in order to align themselves with certain groups. No, that has been since Obama
back in the day.
Office.
All right,
That's
I
been
got
since
that.
Obama been in office.
But I grew up in the 80s and the 90s and what have you, and I was hearing a different thing from the Reagan and the H.W. Bush administration. So you got to take that into consideration, and maybe I dropped the ball because I'm thinking about Republicans and conservatives, and I'm thinking about what the party had always been, even up until McCain was running, and I'm looking at it from that lens. That's all I'm going to. But let me get back to you.
To be fair, I was kind of having this conversation earlier with you guys when we were talking about another topic. I don't even want to dive into that, but you know, people more or less are more like, we don't want to see it. Like, we're okay with you being gay or a part of the LGBTQ community. We just don't want to see it. We want to see it. You can be there, but you need to be in the corner. And I think it's not just a Republican thing. I think it's just a societal thing. Like, oh, well, yeah, you can be what you want, but we want you not, don't be so loud. Come in quiet, you know? Let's continue.
Hold on, but let's stay on the my body, my choice part.
Sure, no problem.
Republicans are not removing women's rights to do what they want to do with their body. The only thing that they're saying is, we don't want that to be the responsibility of the federal government. If that's what you want, then you can vote for it on a state level. That's all they're saying. But see,
he's fucking lying. They don't want abortion at all, even with exceptions. And just like that congresswoman in Florida, she had to get special approval to be able to get because it's not essentially it's the same thing, but it's not called an abortion when, ladies, what is it called when the baby goes in your fallopian tube? So the congresswoman, the baby was stuck in her fallopian tube, so she had to, you know, essentially get an abortion, right? And she lives in Florida. Well, in Florida, you know, she wasn't able to get one. She had to get special approval to eventually get one, and she's still alive. She's still alive because she was able to get that life-changing surgery. So there are extreme cases where they will not approve for you to get an abortion. And on top of that, just like that lady in Atlanta who was brain dead and still had to have the baby, y'all remember that situation? Under extreme circumstances, they are not able to terminate the pregnancy. They literally kept that woman alive just for her to have a baby. You can't tell me that they weren't running tests and shit like that on that woman.
Communication is that they're completely against it. I can disagree with your lifestyle, but still respect your right to do what you want to do because we're governed by the Constitution.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Like my ultimate thing is we are a republic governed by the Constitution. And so we're protected based off of, you know, our rights, our amendments, our right to carry, right? All of these things. Trump is the only person that's protecting and going against birthright citizenship for illegal migrants, leveraging that when that was literally made for Black people and slaves.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I don't see anything that he's doing policy-wise when he's when he's developing a lot of these things that create criteria for people to meet the expectation in order for them to get certain things, even when it comes to government services and help and food stamps and Section 8 and all of that stuff. They're not getting rid of it. They want to remove the people that are taking advantage of it from a fraud perspective.
Here's the thing. They haven't proven that there was any fraud. Remember Doles was making all them cuts and they were saying this was fraud and all. They haven't proven that. They have not proven that there's any fraud, that there's people. And granted, there could be people taking advantage of the system, right? We point to our cousins and whoever in our family, all like, oh yeah, they rigging the system or taking advantage of it. But is there paperwork altogether? We have a personal perception that, you know, they're cheating the system, but are they cheating the system? No, they know. Now you can say they game in the system, but if they got to prove, they got to prove. But essentially what I'm saying is that they have not proven any of the fraud. They just want to make it harder, and they want to make sure that they cut a lot of those programs to save money for them. Because don't forget, they had to pay for these tax cuts to the rich, you know?
Let me throw this by you. Let me throw this scenario about you. Do you have siblings?
I do. 3 brothers. No sisters.
All right, so you don't have any sisters. Okay, so
No
it's
sisters.
a difficult question to ask you, but I'm gonna try anyway because I have
You
four
have a
older
daughter.
sisters. I have four older sisters, right?
Okay.
So you feel the way that you feel, but your sisters come up to you and say, "You ain't a woman. I am, and we need this." And what he or they are proposing is against us. Now, that's not a community backlash. That's not worrying about what the public thinks. But I'll be damned if I didn't hear my sisters come in my face and remind me of the fact that you were raised by 5 women and we don't appreciate what he and them, meaning the GOP, are attempting to do when it comes to our rights as women. I'm asking you, what are you supposed to say, think, and feel in that particular scenario?
I want them to tell me what rights is being removed from them. Because I know that women often at times react emotionally and they're letting their emotions dictate their actions, right? It's okay for you to be emotional. Everybody has emotions.
Manosphere talking point. Oh, you're being emotional.
But I'm not going to let that determine what I actually do, right? And so the thing that I want to understand is the facts. So I would have a conversation with them and I would ask them, what right is it that's being removed from you? Because I don't see it. I don't see any policy. I don't see any legislation. I don't see anything that's being removed from you from a Republican perspective.
Okay. Anton Daniels right here, a straight shooter with yours truly, Stephen A. I want to get to the Black community in this regard because one of the things that, listen, like I said, I don't consider myself a Black conservative. I consider myself a Black man who is an independent that leans left on some things and leans right. That's me. That's how I think about myself.
You can't be that way, Stephen A. You cannot be that way.
I believe I can.
No.
We could answer. I will gladly come on your show. We can argue about that all day, every day, bro. I'm happy to. I can't. Oh, come on. Oh, please, man. All you got to do is say the word.
Because
you say the word, I will come on your show. It's not a problem. It's not a problem at all.
You could do that in sports. You can't do that in popular culture and politics.
Because why?
People in the middle get ran over. You got to pick one side or the other.
45% of the U.S. population is independent right now. I would beg to differ on that. It's climbing.
They're not.
If anything, listen, the independent vote, I think, is going to swing the election one way or the other. What do you say to that?
I don't believe.
I do believe that there is independent voters, and I believe that everyone, no matter what, we all have our different perspective on life and the way things should be done and things should be ran. No one is completely one side or the other. We all essentially are in the middle, right? But where I have to do agree with Anton, and I hate to say this, is that I feel a lot of people say, oh, I'm independent as a cop-out, because they'll say they're independent, right? But they've been voting one way all their life. They'll be like, I'm an independent, but I've only voted for Democrats. I'm an independent, but I only voted for Republicans. Well, if your vote 99% aligns with one party, you are that party. I feel like people say they're independent to sound cool. Almost so like they don't have to have a loyalty to a party. Like, I'm fine if you're independent, but your vote should be independent as well, too. Like, I feel like it's a cop-out. So I do agree with that, but let's continue. And I do think Stephen A. Smith is a conservative.
You don't think that's going to happen?
I don't believe that 45% of the population is independent. I think that they say that as a cop-out, but not wanting to actually say out loud exactly what they represent and who it is that they support, especially within the Black community. It's not popular to say that you're a Republican. It's not popular to say that you're conservative. And so what people lean on is to say, well, I'm independent, in order to give themselves an out for what it is that they choose and not to be accountable for who they support. That's what really is happening. See, I don't believe in what people say. I believe in what people do, right? And I think that a lot of times people are peer pressured, especially today in the Black community, to vote against their own best interest because it's not popular to do when you can't be a part of the cool kids club. And so even with you, I don't like the fact that you apologize for some of the things that you said, because you were absolutely right, especially and particularly against how Jasmine Crockett was representing herself. But because the woke mob decided that they wanted to make you the punching bag and to come after you, and they still didn't.
No, he needed to apologize. Shut your goddamn mouth up, bitch.
And don't support you and didn't accept your apology. But in particular, and I'm saying it's not you, the Don Lemons, the Joy Reids, all of these people, they don't respect you unless you align with what they believe. And so even when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, they don't believe in diversity unless it's aligned with what they believe, which goes against. It's an oxymoron, right? It's hypocritical. And so even when you have an opinion, they don't believe in Black Republicans. Mm-hmm. They only believe if you believe in them and diversity as it aligns with their agenda. Mm. That doesn't make sense. How can you want to have voices in every part of government or voices that's different from yours?
DEI has nothing to do with different perspectives. That's literally a program for diversity, equity, and inclusion as far as people, not ideas. Like, that's stupid. So that argument is voided. But, you know, the point that he's trying to get at is like, oh, they hate Black Republicans. And if you're a Republican, they say, you know, you a coon and you this and that. It's because most of the time, the people that we see online, like Anton Daniels, is with the coonery and buffoonery. This is why you guys get criticized. You know, somebody like Colin Powell, he was a Black Republican, but he was a noble person. You know, he was a part of the whole Iraq war and everything like that, right? We have disagreements at that, but he never made you feel dumb for being a Democrat or feel dumb for not agreeing with him. He was literally a real conservative. Anton Daniels is a grifter. And the reason why he's a grifter is because of this. With the manosphere, a lot of their channels and shit were getting shut down, right? A lot of them were getting reported for hate speech and so forth, so forth. Well, what a lot of these people in the manosphere figured out is like, oh, wait, hold on. How can I get around this without it sounding like hate speech and stuff like that? So what the manosphere has done, and Anton has done it the best, was camouflage themselves under the umbrella of MAGA. So you can still say that women are X, Y, and Z, but you put it under the umbrella and mix it in with policy, it doesn't sound like hatred. And so they're able to push this propaganda and still disrespect women essentially and just say, oh, well, it's policy. This is my thought on what the policy should be. And he's great at what he does. I mean, I can't deny that, but yeah, he's a grifter.
Or representation, but you don't want representation when it doesn't agree with you.
Right.
Like, I can disagree with you on a particular issue, but it doesn't mean that I remove your right to vote or your humanity, or I can't agree with you on this other issue. But that's not what they...
Again, DEI has nothing to do with your perspective or opinion. He's still not getting the point.
They do. They're not tolerant like they sell you.
We all know that when it comes to cancel culture, the Democrats are the ones that are guilty of that. It ain't the Republicans 100%. And the right trying to get people canceled. It's the progressive.
Shut your fucking mouth. Because wasn't it just last September when Charlie Kirk got murked? When he was leaning to the left? Wasn't it just, damn, I'm about to get canceled. But wasn't it just back in September, everybody was getting fired from their job for having an opinion about Charlie Kirk? So you want to say that the left is a part of cancel culture? No, the right is a part of it too. They're even canceling their own. Look at Candace Owens. They reminded Candace Owens that she's Black. So let's not try to play this whole, oh, only Democrats or the left, they believe in cancel culture. The right does it too as well.
Left. There's no doubt about that. We see that every single day. As it pertains, and I'm glad you brought that up, as it pertains to my apology to Jasmine Crockett, what happened was Trump came out thereafter because I backed it up and I stayed on my position. Or not just the first time, but the second time. But then Trump came and used that as an excuse to start questioning our IQ and the intelligence of this Black woman. And I didn't want to be a part of that. That's why I apologize for it. You can agree or disagree with it.
You can't apologize for something that you didn't do wrong, Stephen.
Well, again, but if I felt like I contributed to something that happened wrong to her, that was my only issue. But it didn't take away from what I was saying. Yo, acting like that ain't gonna cut it. Yo, that's not gonna win the election for you. That's not gonna win the Senate seat. That's not gonna make you have more power, more influence in the House of Representatives.
That's not who you are. That's not who you are when you talk about sports. When you talk about sports, you say what you say, and it is what it is.
Yeah, but the point is I have the facts to back it up, not just my opinions. See, when the Detroit Pistons lose to the New York Knicks, so when they lose to the New York Knicks, Anton, right? Okay, I can speak definitively as to why, because the outcome is the outcome. There's nothing subjective about it. So that a lot of, and I get where you come, and I appreciate your comment about that, because a lot of people have looked at me, and even when they've supported me, they've been critical of me from the standpoint, yo, he's talking, but it ain't the same Stephen A. with sports. And I'm like, yo, I got facts to back me up. In politics, this is my perspective. And somebody comes up with something else, I'm listening to you right now. I'm going like this. Well, I did feel this way, but damn, he did make a damn good point here, and he did make a damn good point there. I got to listen. I got to think about that. Because that's how it is.
If they would have listened to you, if they would have listened
she would have won. She would have won. She'd have won.
We align with that, right? But instead, we're more focused on how we feel instead of the results, which leads back to your original question about having a conversation with your sisters. My goal is to get the best results. And ultimately, sometimes I can't even be the nice person to you because I have to be the best person for you, right?
Okay.
I kind of look at it, especially when it comes to women, because there are women that I still protect in my family and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I can't be, like I have a daughter, and I know that you have a couple daughters. I can't be her friend. I have to be her father. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? So sometimes she doesn't know what's best for her, which I can lead her through that with a conversation, but more importantly, I need to educate her at the same time. But I still want the best results. And if people really cared about Jasmine Crockett, then they would have stood 10 toes down and told her the truth instead of just going along with the get along gang to make her feel good about it. And now she's not even a part of she got eliminated in the primary.
There you go. We're talking to Anton Daniels right here on Straight Shooter. What's the hardest part about being a Black conservative?
It's not hard at all.
Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Hype up this video. I keep forgetting to remind you guys to do all that. So please go ahead and do it right now if you haven't. While you guys go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hype up this video, let me make sure to remind you guys, don't forget about our meetup in Vegas, April 10th to the 12th. We are less than 2 weeks away. I cannot believe it, you guys. We are almost here. We're going to have a lot of fun. Make sure you guys DM me, AT2_for_real or AT2 entertainment booking at gmail.com. Let me know if you're coming. I have a lot of stuff lined up for you guys. It's up on Sunday. I still have no clue what we're doing on Sunday, but we're going to figure it out, though. All right, back to the video.
It's not hard at all. It's beautiful. I think that it's like being a man. Sometimes you got to, I think the true measure of a man is doing the things you don't want to do when you don't want to do it. All the time, you don't always want to get up and go to work, right? Because sometimes you're tired. But guess what? Part of being a man is getting up and taking care of business because you got people to take care of. And I think that we've lost that as men, and as masculinity is continuously demonized in the culture. Sometimes we look at it as a bad thing. I look at it as a badge of honor. So I don't think that there's anything, honestly, I don't look at it. I can't think of right off the top of my head something that I'm bothered by when it comes to being a conservative or Republican, because I just think it's an education process. In the same way that I used to critique and look at other people and say, man, I don't understand why they a Republican, is the light and the insight that I had to get. And ultimately, it was people that stood 10 toes down and didn't change just because they wanted somebody to feel good about them, which gave me some incentive to do my own research. And then that's what led me to being a Republican myself.
You said Black culture has become, quote, I'm reading from something that you said here, too victim oriented. But the wealth gap is real. The median white household has several times the wealth of the median Black household, which I know you know. Where do you draw the line between personal responsibility and at least acknowledging structural barriers that may exist?
I don't believe that there are any structural barriers in 2026. And I think to say that it is disrespectful to the people that was actually civil rights leaders that fought for our ability to do the things that we're doing today. We don't even show up to the polls. And most of the time, especially if it's a local election or it's an election that's off cycle from the national election, we're less than 20% showing up at the polls, but it's people that died for us to vote, right? We literally can determine our own future today. There's nothing holding us back. Now, if you told me this 100 years ago, 50 years ago, I might have listened to you. I might have took that and said, you know what? There are some things that's preventing us from being what we are. But honestly, most of the things, I would say 98, 99% of the things that is wrong with us is self-inflicted wounds. And life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you react to it. So if you're telling me, like, for example, they'll use, schools and HBCUs or whatever. I went to community college and I made my way through corporate America and got to some of the highest levels in corporate America in banking, information technology, UX, UI. I went to community college, transferred over to, before I went to community college, I got a job at the university.
I have to look it up, but I believe Anton Daniels was like a salesman or something like that. He's talking about he was working in corporate. I believe he was some kind of salesman, or he was doing like some kind of door-to-door job. I'll have to verify that after the show, but I think he's lying about some of what he's trying to say. But, granted, I'll let him keep going.
University of Michigan. The University of Michigan then helped pay for my education to go to a major university after I transferred from that community college. Why don't we embrace that? Why don't we embrace trades? Why don't we embrace, different cultural norms that's not toxic to us? So in 2026, if I'm expected to teach my daughter, who just turned 18, that there's something that's preventing her from being successful and she need a leg up or a handout in order to be that, it'll be a cold day in hell before I ever tell her that.
See, you and I disagree in this regard. I believe that when you talk about most of our issues are self-inflicted, I'm just not going as high as the 98% that you threw out there. I think it's more like 70-30 personally. That's what I do. I think it's more like 70-30 in your favor. But I think it's more like 70-30. And here's why. Because I can use the word structural barriers, but then I can turn around when you debunk that and say, okay, no proverbial glass ceiling. I certainly believe that exists. There's definitely a proverbial glass ceiling. Because when you walk into, you walk in, like, for example, let me use me for example, because you'll appreciate this. So everybody talks about me and they talk about my contract and, I signed this contract with ESPN. All
beautiful. And congratulations on that.
I appreciate that. And I saw your comments too. Thank you for that. But let me say this to you. Bro, it was after I worked in the business for 20 plus years. And if it was after I watched a multitude of people get their paper. So I have this saying, and I'll give you the floor to answer this. I've had this saying, when the white folks catch a cold, black folks catch pneumonia. It's always worse for us. And the system is designed in such a way where it doesn't mean that you won't get yours. It doesn't mean that you can't get yours as a black person. But usually there's a figurative line and it's going to be somebody white ahead of you that's going to get it. That's what I'm
ahead of you right now. Who's ahead of you, Stephen A? Nobody. You ain't even.
That's after 20 plus years, though.
But that means you worked your ass off.
Yes. Exactly.
I read your book. I know everything that you went through. I know where you got started. I know what happened at Winston-Salem. I know how you got injured. I know where your inspiration came from, right? I know that you was over in Philadelphia really working your ass off in order to get to the spaces that you in. I know that you took accountability for your contract not going the way that it was supposed to go in 2009, right? Yep. I know that you talked to the head of ESPN and he told you that your time wasn't up yet, but you worked your ass off, right? You wrote articles. You did everything that you needed to do. I know that you leveled up and nothing that you did could be taken away from you because you earned everything that you have. You didn't run in the Victim Olympics, and I think that you're handicapping other people because you deserve.
Anton is not listening to a thing that he just said. I'm going to let him finish and then I'll comment.
That $100 million contract. Nothing in your book. Not one thing that I read in your book. Straight shooter. Right. Not one thing that I read in your book. Even when it came to your childhood and your father and you describing everything that he did that ultimately led you to becoming the man that you, even when you talked about kids teasing you based off of dyslexia and everything, not one thing in your book did you ever make an excuse for and say, you know what, I'm a victim. You use that as leverage and motivation to push you further. Yeah. And you are the top dog in the field right now.
But I appreciate
that.
But
how can you make that argument, Stephen A., when that's not even a reflection of what your life is?
But because what I'm saying to you is that just because I'm not encouraging anybody to embrace victim mentality. I apologize if I gave that impression, but I had to be that dog. I had to push through. I had to keep going. All I'm saying is I acknowledged in my own mind some of the barriers that I was going to have to maneuver my way through in order to ascend. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, and I wasn't going to embrace the victim mentality. But it doesn't mean that I was walking around acting like it didn't exist. I just knew I had to overcome it because bitching and whining about it ain't going to get it done. I knew that. That's all I'm saying. That's entirely different than saying it doesn't exist.
When we say that, we give people permission to bitch and whine. And I'm
gonna stop it right here because I'm gonna get pissed off and end up tossing everything in here, and I don't want them to keep my $250 deposit for this apartment. So what I'm gonna say to this, because again, this is one of the things that conservatives like to say, but I would just say black people in general, like, oh, you guys have a victim mentality. Why do you guys say you're oppressed? Like, who's oppressing you? Like, why are you guys always crying and this and that and that and this? Like, no black person's going around being like, I'm oppressed. Oh my God, the world's coming to an end. That's just something that they like to, put on you, like, oh, you're acting like a victim and this and that. Bullshit. What Stephen A. Smith specifically was talking about, how he has seen so many people come and surpass him, get paid better than him, get better, better positions, better, acknowledgement. And he has had to work and literally grind to get to the position that he is. Stephen A. Smith is 50-something years old compared to someone who might be younger than him, who's less talented than him, less notoriety than him, will get paid or put in a higher position without having to do all that work. Again, just like I talked about earlier, how there's this perception that black people need to struggle in order to know how it is and, get it out the mud and all this stuff. Why should you have to get it out the mud if, one, you're doing the work, two, if you have access and the ability not to struggle? Who wants to struggle? Do you think the people who got it out the mud, quote unquote, wanted to struggle? No. That notion of like, oh, you need to pick yourself up and do all this. No, F you. I don't have to do that. I need to do my job. That's what I need to do. Because we've all worked those jobs where you can be the best employee ever and you still get shitted on. You still have to grind. You still have to prove that you are the best and and you're on top of your shit. You know how like usually you go to a job and you have a 90-day probation? When you black, you're always on probation. Like that probation is not in. How many times we should have got a higher position, but they ended up hiring somebody outside the company because they said, oh, they have a better skill or they're knowledgeable in a certain job. How many times have we heard that? How many times have we looked at our friends or our coworkers surpass us and we know that we were better? We even taught them the job, but somehow they got the job over us. It's happened to a lot of us, right? And so Anton basically ignoring what Stephen A. Smith is saying just to push his own agenda and his conservative talking points, he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. Stephen A. Smith never said that he was a victim. And mind you, I don't even like Stephen A. Smith, but he never said he was a victim. But he realized that when it comes to procedures and policies put into place, Black people have to work 30 times, a billion times harder. It's a fact. This is why there is a wealth gap. We don't have generational wealth. The reason for that is because the policies that were put in. We were redlined out of white communities where we could not rent and get loans in their community. They forced us to be in these lower income not even lower income neighborhoods. I don't even like to say that, but in the hoods, in the ghettos, you know? We don't talk about how, with Black schools, they're underfunded. They're not well kept up. The books are raggedy. The books are old. Then you have to deal with poverty where people are not even coming from homes where they're eating 3 meals a day. That school lunch might be their only meal. They don't have childcare. The child is at home by themselves for at least 4 or 5 hours before the parent even gets home because they can't afford childcare. In healthcare, we know when Black people are in pain, they look at us like, no, well, what you crying about? We don't get all the new drugs and all that stuff. They think that we're trying to game the system. How many Black women have lost their lives because they're not taken seriously? Serena Williams even talked about this when she had her children. Like, the doctor basically ignored her pain, ignored her cries for help, and she was almost deleted off this earth because the doctor was ignoring her concerns. So you can't never say that there isn't anything, what's up, Katorbe? Anything that's oppressing us and keeping us down, and say like, oh, all you guys are doing is the victimhood. No, what we're doing is telling the truth. We're calling it out, which we should call it out, so the next generation after us doesn't have to deal with the same bullshit. So Anton using those talking points and trying to overtalk Stephen A. Smith, and he knows what he's doing. He knows that Stephen A. Smith doesn't have the vernacular or doesn't really know anything, so he can overtalk him and try to bully him, almost, because that's what he was doing, trying to bully him into thinking or changing his perspective. And it's all like, no, dude, you know what you're doing and you know what you're talking about. The Anton Daniels, and mind you, because Anton has been in the news and he's been being exposed, like they were like, wait, this is a completely different guy than what he was years ago. And you'll see a lot of these YouTubers, they were like different people a long time ago, and then now they're totally changed, and you're like, wait, hold on, this is like night and day. Essentially, you do over time change your perspective about life, you know, as we get older, right? But you don't do a complete like 180 drastically. I think you get a little help when you're able to grift and make a lot of money. And Anton has been very successful at grifting, and Stephen A. Smith is following in his footsteps. But again, oh, I want to say something too, because he's saying like Republicans don't hate gay people. So when Joe Biden was trying to codify interracial marriage and gay marriage, there were, I believe, like 30 Republicans that voted against codifying gay marriage and interracial marriage. So you can't say, and this was in the Senate, so you can't say they are against, they're not against gay marriage. So, you know, that argument is voided out, because even, what's his name? Mitch McConnell, who's married to an Asian woman, voted against that bill. So, I mean, yeah. Let's stop playing. They love the Live Project 2025 proves they are against gay. Ding, 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 ding. Project 2025, follow the layout. Thank you for bringing that up, Katorbe. I appreciate that. All right, you guys, we're going to go ahead and get the heck up out of here. But please go ahead and hit that like button. Now you can hype the video now that I'm about to end it. Subscribe to the channel. Also, if you guys like what you've seen, please let me know in the comment section if you agree or disagree. I love having conversations with you guys, so I appreciate y'all. Y'all be safe. Love one another. Deuces, everybody.